Welcome to the show, it's time to unwind. With Dave B and Dave D, the best brews you'll find. Craft beer talk, it's a passion we share. From hops to malts, we're taking you there. This is Daftaboutcraft, where the good times flow. Sit back and relax, let the flavors glow. Brews, news, and views, we've got it all right. Cheers to craft beer, let's raise it tonight.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome along to episode 69 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. It's Dave D sitting in this seat.
And me, Dave B.
Well, how have you all been? It seems like a little while since we sat here doing an episode, Dave.
Yeah, we sort of were ready and raring for January, and then January went about 612 days, as goes with all the memes. We have got there, but February's been a little bit disjointed, although it's been a short month, hasn't it? There's been illness in my camp, and
Dave had the audacity to go on holiday for a week as well.
I did, and that's it. Yes, there was illness, and then I actually had the audacity to take a few days off. So yeah, it's led to a slight delay of things, but we've still got lots on, haven't we?
Absolutely. Well, we're really looking forward to this. An interview with the man behind one of the most interesting breweries of 2024/25. One of our Welsh friends, Dark Element.
Yes, Tom quickly established himself as one of the preeminent breweries of 2024. We were sort of on at ground level. So he's recently turned one, very kindly sent us the 4 birthday beers to mark the occasion, and been very excited to try them.
Looking at them earlier in the fridge thinking, we need to try these soon, can't wait for this. But no, it's a really exciting brewery, and it seems that wherever you go now, bottle shops specifically have got some of his beers on the shelves. He's getting a lot of coverage on social media platforms, and it seems to really be taking off. So that'll be fascinating to talk to Tom about what 2025 is going to hold for him and the second year of Dark Element. We have got Cloudwater featuring in Highport Try.
Because it's their birthday as well.
It's everybody's birthday. And of course, Cloudwater, one of the original craft breweries here in the UK, they're 10 years old, and they've released 6 beers for their 10th birthday, and we'll be trying some of those. You going to go for the tipper, Dave?
Well, I've bought through 2 beers, and I'm going to let you choose which one I have.
Okay. Well, I've bought through 3, so you can choose which one I have.
Okay, fine.
We've also got Tried and Tested, our favourite beer since our last episode. And we'll kick off, as we always do, with Brew to Me, where we find a brewery we've not had a beer from before and give them a go. So over to you, Dave, as usual. Who is your brewery this time?
You have had this brewery.
Oh,
so
you cheated.
Yeah, I did. I did end up having to slightly cheat. Just as a wider point, I know, and you know, that breweries do listen to this podcast, and I'm not saying that all the breweries that listen to this podcast have been on the podcast. So please do get in touch if you want to come on. We want to put you on. We want to promote. We want to put you in the spotlight. And I did find I was really, really struggling to get some engagement with a lot of people that I was sort of messaging until, fortunately, slightly unbeknownst to me, it just shows how many episodes we've done, that I sort of forgot, because I didn't do them, that you'd done them.
I spoke to them as part of my Brew to Me, but it's still fair dues because you haven't tried any of their beers.
No, and our brewery, OUR, based in Northern Ireland. So I reached out to them, and fair play to Sam, who's their sales man that we'll hear from in a bit, came straight back and said, oh yeah, no problem at all. Very kindly sent over 3 different beers, which he'll tell you about. And I thought, because I didn't think this beer style's actually featured on the pod before, I will try Pressure to Pick, which is their Italian-style Pilsner. We've had lagers on before, and I don't necessarily know if I'd be able to pick an Italian-style lager out of a pack, would you?
I could say yes, but I'd probably be lying.
So I thought, well, I'll have this because it's a good one. The other 2 beers that Sam talks about were a triple and a New England IPA, which, figures as my normal go-to. But I thought, no, I will do something a little bit different. So not necessarily expecting anything fancy here, because it's described as quite a crushable beer. The hop used is Aurora, not one I'm massively familiar with.
No.
And the other thing that I am slightly more interested in. It's a bit nerdy, but then, we're doing a craft beer podcast. The grain they use Pilsner grain from Dingerman's, and that features in the other beers, and that's Belgian. So they sort of seem to rely quite heavily on Belgian style grains. So just whether I'll get any sense of that coming through. It's probably a deeper colour lager. It's not as far as amber, but it wouldn't be...
It's not that straw colour or anything, is it?
It's definitely not straw. It'd be more in the medium. It's quite a sweet nose, and it tastes like a lager. I still don't know if I would know what makes it Italian in style, but it's definitely a Pilsner. Probably not quite as crisp as a German Pilsner, I would say.
I remember being quite impressed with their beers, actually, the one I had on the podcast and then others I've had subsequently. And it's worth saying that our brewery is part of a company called Get a Brewed, which sell ingredients and all manner of things to brewers. A lot of brewers use Get a Brewed. So you would think they would be quite accomplished at brewing, and it really seems that they are.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The beers that I've been sent are part of their sort of more core range, but as Sam says, they do a lot of seasonal stuff, which sounds really interesting. And also, there's a real focus on the mixed firm stuff, which I know is sort of really becoming part of your bag, isn't it?
Yeah, very much.
Increasingly mine, but I think you're ahead of me at the moment with how much you enjoy it. But anyway, let's hear a bit more from Sam. I've sort of bigged him up enough, and he can tell us a bit more about our brewery.
Hi guys, I'm Sam. I'm the sales representative for our brewery. Thanks for asking us to feature on this episode. Much appreciated. I've sent over a couple of beers for you. Hopefully you can enjoy them. I've sent over a New England IPA, our flagship beer, the Do You Want a Funk hop forward New England IPA, coming in about 6.5. Really floral, tropical, juicy. I think you'll really enjoy it. The Pressure to Pick Italian Pilsner, a lovely 4.3% crushable beer, fairly traditional lager style that you can enjoy after a hard week on a Friday. It's one of my favourites. And our Belgian triple as well, the prime time of your life, coming in at a whopping 8%. It's a very good seller for us. Loads of people love it. It was the traditional Belgian malts that I know you'll really love. This past year has been a really good year for us. We started brewing in 2021, and the progress we've been able to make in the short space of time has been really, really pleasing. A couple of beers I've sent over for you are from our core range, but we also have a seasonal range. We have a Belgian stout out at the minute, which is very, very tasty. A fruit salad peel, which is selling really well for us. We also have a barrel-aged and mixed fermentation range, which really is our passion, to be honest. Johnny, our founder and owner, who you had on last time in a previous episode, it's really a passion project for him to have lovely wild fermented and mixed fermented beers. Really, the whole brewing community in Northern Ireland can be proud of. We're a big community brewery. We like to give back to the community as much as we can. Through Get Brewed, we have very close relationships with a lot of the other breweries in the community, and really brewing beers for everyone is what we're all about. And I think our beers do that. So I hope you can have a couple of samples of what we think would be great to feature on the show. And I look forward to listening to it myself and hearing what you think. All right, guys, enjoy the experience. Cheers.
There you go. Thank you very much, Sam. Yeah, really interesting. They really have a lot going on there in County Antrim, not just with the beers, but with Get a Brewed as well. And it sounds like they're doing good things.
Yeah, and this is nice. This does exactly what it says it will. It is crushable. It's not all singing and all dancing, but I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be for a lager. But as the first beer to have on a rare afternoon recording session for ourselves, I'm very much enjoying it.
Excellent. Well, while you sip away on that, I'm going to Lancashire for my brew to me, and I have got a brewery. You're not going to have heard of this. I don't think most of our listeners will. It's called Turtlehead Brewing. No, I didn't think so. And the name, well, I'm not going to tell you what the name means. In fact, tell you what, let's go straight into Imogen to tell us about Turtlehead and what it is and what they do.
Hello everyone, my name is Imogen Rose Angel Gregory. I'm 22 years old. I was born and raised in Preston, Lancashire, and I am the managing director of Turtlehead Brewing Company. this is our story. The name Turtlehead is exactly what you think it is. It all started out as a joke in 2023. My dad, brother, and I were at a craft beer bar in Exeter, chatting and laughing over craft beer names and thinking what ridiculous names he could come up with. Gorilla's Finger, Bricklayer, Cloth Toucher, Ghost, etc., etc. The conversation then became a little bit more serious, and we thought we were onto something big, a way to bring attention to a serious condition that can affect anyone and make people laugh simultaneously. If you haven't really caught on by now, and maybe you need a bit of a hint or a direct telling, Turtlehead is a poo joke. They're all poo jokes. It's all about poo, which is a way that we hope to make people laugh and grab attention. I've been working with craft beer since I was 18, and I'm very familiar with the different styles and different names and what can really grab a person's attention. And I definitely think a poo joke is definitely going to grab a person's attention. So here's sort of our story and the context of Turtlehead. My mum was diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer when I was 15 years old. It was a disease that affected the whole family, but mostly her. Even though she lived with cancer for a big part of my life, she was always a fiercely positive person. She was constantly cracking a smile, constantly making jokes, and she coined the phrase tumour humour, which definitely shocked me the first time I heard it. She took to social media for a while, advocating for people to check their bits and shits. So I think it's only right that I pick up the baton and I spread the exact same message that my mum wanted to talk about. I think my mum would be proud of what my family and I are trying to achieve with Turtlehead Brewing Company. It's definitely well within the lines of her humour. Now onto the business itself. We have a range of beers that are all gluten-free, 2 of which are exclusively wheat and gluten-free. That would be the Bricklayer Lager, which is personally my favourite, and Cliffhanger, a traditional ale. A lot of our beers are also vegan, which I definitely think the vegan population would appreciate because, like I say, with working with beer, I have experienced quite a few non-vegan beers, and people definitely get really upset because they think it sounds so nice, but they can't have it because it's not vegan. So all the vegan lovers can definitely have Turtlehead Brewing Company. We have cultivated a range of beers to accommodate everyone's tastes, and we are looking into increasing the range to include some stouts and some sours, which I'm very excited for. I love a sour. Sours are my favourites. We also have a traditional amber bitter, a golden blonde, which is my dad's favourite, a European-style lager, and a chocolatey porter called Gorilla's Finger. And we have just recently added a 0.5 ABV beer called Ninja. So we've got an alcohol-free option as well, guys. Our plans are to grow the business and perhaps look into a tap room, but currently we're in the process of setting up an outside bar business so that we can take to all sorts of events. Maybe we'd see you guys at festivals, maybe we'll see you guys at like craft beer markets and stuff. We're hoping to decimate the north essentially, but well, decimate England, go international, who knows. We've got really big hopes for this company. We really want to spread a message. But what is really driving us behind the purpose of the company is to raise awareness for cancer and generate funds for the Orange Foundation, which is a charity we established in the memory of my mum, and to give practical support to people living with cancer. So not only when you drink Turtlehead Brewing Company are you having a laugh with your mates because it's all a big poo joke, but you are going to be doing some good because 50% of our profits go to the Orange Foundation to help support people living with cancer. So I really hope if you ever see our beers in the shop, if you ever see our beers online, that you think, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do some good today and I'm going to buy a Turtlehead Brewing Company beer. Cheers. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for listening.
Well, I don't usually include the voice note straight away before I've tried the beer, but I thought I would in this case because Turtlehead, as you've just heard there, was formed after Imogen's mum died from cancer. And so they wanted to sort of give something back to cancer charities, and they give 50% of their profits, as you've just heard there, to charity, which is obviously a hugely commendable thing. And all of their beers are named, as she so delicately touched there, on sort of poo-related names because it was bowel cancer.
Yes, well, before hearing the voice note, when you said Turtlehead, that's what you thought. That is what I thought. So,
I mean, it's what a great thing to do, though, to give back in that way. I thought it was amazing. So the beer I've got is Driftwood, which is a 4.2% amber ale. Now, they were kind enough to send 16 bottles down, which is fantastic. That's our biggest haul ever, I think, Dave, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be, I would have thought.
So I'll make sure I get some to you, of course. They cover all sorts of different styles. This is an amber ale, quite traditional. as you'd expect an amber ale to be. But there was a blonde, there's an IPA, a pale. There's all sorts of things. But how does it taste? That's the thing. An amber ale wouldn't be what I'd usually go for, of course, would it?
No, an amber ale would be very much a departure for yourself. I could see you possibly having that, not if forced to, but on cask somewhere in a pub. But that'd be about the limit. I wouldn't necessarily think of you having it at home.
I think it's because, like you said before, we're recording a bit earlier in the day today, and it's sort of mid-afternoon. So I thought it might be quite nice.
Yep.
And it is quite nice. It's very, very, very drinkable. Goodness.
Nice colour. I know your camera always comes up a bit dark. But that it is a lovely colour from what I can see.
And it's got that lovely head retention as well. It's lovely. The bubbles are clinging to the side of the glass there, just doing everything it's supposed to do. That's very, very good. I'm glad I've got a few bottles of it, and you'll have one as well.
Excellent.
It is lovely finding these breweries that, I'd never heard of them before, and you search around and they pop up, and they were thrilled to be asked to take part in the podcast as well, which was also very nice. It's worth pointing out that the package I got was all bottles, but they've got some cans on the way as well, I saw, which are being released during March. So keep an eye out for those. Have a look on their website, and I might try and put an order in myself, actually, because I'd be really interested to try what their beers taste like in can. We get obsessed with cans and bottles and stuff, don't we? But
yeah.
We've talked about this before, about when you see a bottle, you kind of think that the brewery's more trad, but that doesn't necessarily hold true more and more, to be honest.
I don't think it does, and it's probably something that, as a hang-up, we need to lose, because obviously the amount of times that the Colonel get mentioned during the course of a podcast or two with ourselves, they have religiously stuck to bottles, and would I ever think of them as being traditional? So, just...
In fact, if you saw one of their beers in a can, you'd be horrified.
I wouldn't enjoy... Yeah, exactly. So
it can work both ways. But this beer, I poured the whole bottle out now. It's a 330ml bottle, and there's not much left. Excellent. Really enjoyed that. So check out Turtlehead and read about all their good work they do on their website. There's loads on there to read. Daftaboutcraft connoisseurs might remember that a few months ago we had a brewery on our Hypod Tripe feature called Dark Element, and we tried their beers for the very first time, and we concluded that they were 100% worthy of the hype category, not in any way tripe. We were really, really impressed, and since then we've kept a very close eye on Dark Element, and we're delighted to say that Tom, the main man behind Dark Element, is here today to have a chat with us. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, we're good. We're delighted you've joined us. We tried to get you on before and you were a bit hesitant, but you've worked your way up to it now and you're ready.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been a year of me pestering you on WhatsApp.
Yeah. We ground him down eventually. And the reason we've asked you to come on is, of course, because Dark Element has just celebrated its first birthday. You kicked off brewing in December 23, released your first beers in January 24, and you recently released 4 beers for your first birthday, which we've got right in front of us, and we'll be drinking some of those shortly. So, Tom, what led you to start your own brewery just over 12 months ago, at an incredibly difficult time in the industry? Some might say you're a little bit mad. What led you to that decision?
I think the majority of the decision was seeing there was lots of new breweries sort of popping up, and I was just loving this style of beer. So I felt that there was just a gap, especially sort of in the South Wales area where you don't see massive amounts of sort of the hazy hoppy stuff. So yeah, I've drunk the beer for years, never really brewed it much previously. Always been a massive fan of the style, so just really wanted to give it a go myself.
So you came from Brew Monster. What sort of things were you brewing there?
So Brew Monster was more on the side of like a sort of bar brewery business. So it had a couple of bars. So a lot of the styles would be sort of probably entry level into each style. So, I'd be brewing sort of wheat beers, stouts, pales, and then I sort of would creep into the New England style now and again. But yeah, majority of the beers brewed were across a load of different styles.
So you sort of just touched on it there. Obviously, a Dark Element beer, as it stands at the moment, you have released pale after pale after pale, and a lot of other breweries would do that, and you'd go, so what? Somehow, your beers, they stood out when they first came out a year ago when David and I first had them. It was like, oh my goodness, these match up with what all the big hitters are doing already on these styles, and you've kept it there. Were you ever tempted when you got going to think, right, well, I'm going to do a couple, but then I'm probably going to have to diversify a bit, because otherwise who's going to keep coming back for New England IPAs? Because it's a great style. I love them as well, but am I going to consistently be able to sell them, or are people just going to get a bit bored?
To be honest, it was never really the plan to stick fully to New England's off the bat. Like I said, it was my favourite style, and I just really enjoyed brewing them. I'll be honest, it was quite lucky, really, that they'd taken off the way they did, and the feedback was really strong from the start. Originally, I was actually going to go with like a core range and probably not brew as many new beers as often. But it's definitely sort of, a lot of people, especially now, are searching for, so what's the next beer? What's the next beer? What's the next beer? It's almost pushed me to go into that direction, but it was a really good thing, because it's made me like delve more into this style, use a lot of hops that I wouldn't have used previously. So it's kind of like a lesson in a way, if that makes sense, because I've learned a lot more, a lot quicker.
Yeah, I think that probably answers a little bit of what I was going to sort of say next. New England's are great, but if you just mess around with Citra Mosaic and Simcoe a lot, there's only so much you can do.
And a lot of breweries do struggle after 3 or 4 pails to keep on raising the bar and mixing it up with different hops and creating really good beers, but you seem to have nailed it.
I think with the beers, I tried to get sort of a really good base. Not saying that it's easy to work off that base, but it makes it a lot easier to put flavours that you wouldn't associate really with New England, because majority of them are tropical, but I definitely like to experiment a bit with more weedy sort of dank notes in the beer. I do that quite often.
Yeah, I think that's how I pick one of your beers out a bit. It might open up with a really fruity nose, and even if it tastes quite fruity to start, there'll be a bit of a hit on the back end somewhere, a bit of weedy dankness in there. Not always, but more often than not, there's just that little edge which separates yours out, I think, from the super sweet.
I think that's more just a personal preference of mine, and it's been sort of great that it's been received well in that sense, because I do like beers to be sweet, but I definitely prefer them to have that bitterness sort of on the finish, I don't like them to be sweet just throughout all the way.
And to put it into context for people that might not have been following your progress, how many beers have you released within the 12 months?
It's around between 40 and 45, I want to say.
Wow, I didn't think it would be that high. That is mega impressive.
I'm not sure of the exact number, but I know it's around between 40 and 45.
That is super impressive. Wow, I didn't think it was that many. So are you working at this full time now? Is this your job?
Yeah, my full-time job. So
Right.
yeah, pretty much doing this all week, every week.
I know you a one-man band as it stands.
Yeah, so one-man band. I do have help. So I've got friends that, help me with canning and help me with accounts and things that side. But in terms of like all the production and, delivering and sending stuff out, yeah, one-man band.
Oof.
Yeah, it's tough.
Delve into that a bit more. How are you finding it? How tough is it? And is it tougher than you imagined it would be?
It's definitely tougher than I imagined it would be, for sure, because although I've been a brewer for a long time, I've never had to sort of delve into the other parts of it. So it would always be, I can make the beer, and then it's sort of from the point of being packaged, then it's sort of moved on to the next department, to be sold, shipped out, whatever. But it was definitely an eye-opener to see how different and how difficult it is to sort of juggle it all. It's getting a lot easier now. Being a year in has definitely made things more efficient. Just doing it for a while, obviously, you sort of create better ways to do things, don't you? So put a couple of things in place to make each section easier, using software to help with admin, using software to help with the sales side of things to make the load a bit lighter.
And you've brewed that many beers in a year. The kit you've got obviously can take that. Is it already at capacity? Are you already sort of having to think, if I'm going to crack on the next level, I need to get a bigger kit, or are you sort of okay with where you are?
I'm pretty okay at the moment. I think the next step to sort of putting capacity up would be employment, but not quite there yet, to be honest. So at the moment, it's probably I'm pretty stretched, but not stretched enough, if that makes sense. So in a pretty good position at the moment.
And are you sort of happy to go at your own pace, or people like us telling you how great your beers are we sort of sweeping you along with it? Do you feel sometimes that you're getting pushed along to do things faster than you want, or are you sort of determined you're going to do it in your own time?
No, definitely stick to the way I do it. I do experiment a lot with the beers anyway. I've been brewing this style obviously a year for Dark Element, but I didn't delve into it massively before that. So there's still a lot of experimentation at the moment. And I just worry if anything's ever done differently, it could cause an issue. I won't be changing processes.
That's good.
So nothing will be shortened. It's just more about, I've done a lot of experimenting with sort of different bases, different levels of, higher oak usage, different ways to hop the beer. But outside of that, time scale of beer will remain the same. It's just
I just think
sort
sometimes
of fine tuning.
I always think that breweries can maybe just get swept up in the moment when they burst onto the scene and they're so successful, and they can just get carried along and do things a bit faster than they might like. So it's great if you're going to stick to your own pace.
It's definitely sort of what I can keep up with rather than trying to grow or trying to make more beer. I'll produce what I can produce. As that starts to go along, I'll sort of look into maybe employing some help or something like that in the future. But for now, I'm sort of where I'm at for now.
And if suddenly there's a big shift and everyone, you see it, everyone's been doing a session beer and sort of West Coast is coming back in a bit. Do you feel like, oh, well, if everyone else is doing it, I'd probably feel obliged to do it? Or are you just going to stick to doing what you want to do?
No, to be honest, I'm probably going to stick this out. Even my tastes might change. We don't know in a year. It could be that the beers are just generally a bit drier because tastes have changed. I think hazy pales in general are just here to stay pretty much, aren't they? So whether you go down the super thick route or even just having them a little bit drier, I think when things change, it's usually sort of between sweet and dry, I find. So you can find a way, I think, to adapt, I guess.
It's nuance, isn't it? It's not, you don't have to have a big shift in what you do, I guess.
I think, to be honest, I just love these beers. So for me, I'm just going to keep trying to learn more about them and progress it,
It's not about you, Dave, but I sort of, speaking to Tom here, he's saying he's sort of learning on the job, but we're not blowing smoke or anything, but these beers are already very, very good.
We said, and we were probably we must have been on and amongst the first batch, that we tried these beers for either the episode a year ago or the January episode. So literally the first beers you put out, first 3 beers you put out, I think it was. Those beers just stood out straight away. It was like, my goodness, this is like having the beers of, breweries that have massive kits and do it all the time. And all they've done is stand up since. So your grounding must have been pretty good to get to the level straight away to pop them out. I think that was what stood out, is the level that they came out at. It wasn't like, there's room for improvement. It was like,
usually when a new brewery comes on the scene, their beers, they're often pretty good to start with, but you can see there's room for improvement. But it's kind of hard to see where you're going to be improving these. I'm drinking one of your birthday beers here. It's 7.2%. I noticed there's Nelson in there, and usually I can smell Nelson 1,000 feet, but this is really subtly done. It's really well balanced and all the rest of it. It's hard to see how much better it could get.
Don't get me wrong, it's not like I've only just brewed New Englands over the last year. I have done them. I've been brewing for 10 or so years now, so I have brewed New Englands throughout, and obviously I've read a lot about them because they were one of my favourite styles to drink over the last couple of years. So it was just putting it into practice as every beer, I guess, was more the new thing. So before I could brew a New England, and then there'd be a gap of maybe doing 10 different styles, different beers, whereas this time I guess there was a bit of pressure because they were all this style, so it had to be good. It wasn't amongst loads of other beers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you got to sort of focus your attentions on it.
Yeah, I found that I was okay at doing them before, but now I'm doing them very often. It becomes a bit easier, I think.
Yeah, of course.
Like it's,
practice makes perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's still some things I do definitely want to improve on in the beers, but I think that'll come with time and a bit more experimenting until I'm happy.
So rewinding the story back to the very beginning of your brewing journey, how did that start? Were you home brewing? How did it all come about?
No. So I was actually nothing to do with the industry. I did a carpentry apprenticeship. When that finished, I was out of work. We had something here called Jobs Growth Wales. A brewing apprenticeship came up with Tiny Rebel. So I actually went into that job with zero knowledge on brewing, or I would have been...
This story gets even more
18,
wild.
19, yeah, I would have been 18, 19 at the time, so I would have been sort of new to beer anyway, really, at that point.
So right from the very get-go, you were learning on the job?
Yeah, so I went in as like an apprentice assistant brewer and just kept pushing to try and brew, and just took a massive interest in it, sort of found my niche.
So going on a slight tangent, you must have seen a lot of growth at Tiny Rebel while you were there as well then.
Yeah, it was. I left not long after it went up to the big brewery, so I was probably there for a year or so, maybe at the bigger place, but I can't remember quite how long they were going when I first started. Maybe a year or 2 years, possibly. So yeah, it was a really small unit. Well, I say a small unit. It was a lot of brewing, but a smaller unit. And then saw the growth.
So when you look at them now, have you got ambitions to be like them one day, or do you just want to stay as you are?
No, to be honest, I'd just like to keep it small. Maybe have a small team of people if that opportunity comes up. But yeah, I'm not really interested in growth, to be honest. I just want to be producing the beer and still always be able to have a hands-on sort of aspect in it. I think with growth, isn't it, you just naturally have to step away a bit. And I just don't want to do that. Yeah, I have no interest in really growing. Maybe a little bit bigger, but I don't want to go big, if that makes sense.
But the taproom thing, presumably, you'd want to do at some point.
Yeah, that would be quite a high consideration. Yeah, probably doing a taproom or something eventually.
Dave sort of touched on it earlier that you've been drinking Milestone, which is the strongest of the 4 birthday beers, but we didn't sort of get into that properly, Dave. Obviously, you're enjoying it, but what's it all about, basically?
To be honest, it just made sense. I think time had gone so quick over that first year that never really stopped to sort of think that, oh, it's actually been a year. And I think that was just a bit of a wow moment. So I thought Milestone was like a perfect fit for that beer, being sort of the first year's done. You know, it's gone so quick, but a lot's happened in that year, and I just didn't know what to expect. Like I said, when I started Dark Element, I had no idea how well it was going to do, if people were going to like the beer. So yeah, I think it's an important beer for that. It was just sort of we've done the first year. The first year is out of the way.
I suppose, like you say, because it's all been so fast-paced and basically a new beer pretty much every week of your first year, you don't get time to reflect on what you've actually achieved.
No, for sure. I brewed the birthday beers sort of late December. It didn't kick in until sort of the January that I was like, yeah, I've been doing this a year. It's crazy. It's gone so quick. It only feels like I've been doing it for about 3 months now. So
actually, we should ask, where does the name Dark Element come from? What's the inspiration for that?
So I'm quite a pessimist as a person generally, quite anxiety, introvert.
This is why you and Dave get on so well.
Yeah, so the name Dark Element sort of come about from me always seeing the dark side of things, if that makes sense. So it just felt like a fit. And I thought with the branding, if it sort of felt like it fit around my personality, it makes it easier to be creative with things. So being able to do the masks and all this kind of stuff, it felt fun rather than a branding, if that makes sense.
And the branding is marvellous. Rather than me sitting and explain it, you explain what your branding looks like.
We basically have a mask for every single design, and then it could either be related to a song, feeling, whatever. With each design, some of them are obvious, so you'll have like a skull and it's obviously a face, and then others there'll be sort of a hidden face or a hidden character or something there where it's kind of open to interpretation. So I've seen when people have had the beers, they've made comments that, oh, this must be from X or this must be from X, like something they've noticed. And I find that great that people make something out of it. It's just anonymous, isn't it, in a way?
It is anonymous, but they also, from a sort of more commercial point of view, they really stand out in that if you put them in the bottle shop lineup, you can always spot one of your cans now.
And also, when you're sort of scrolling through Instagram or whatever, even if you're sort of scrolling through quite quickly and just looking at this, you can, oh, look, there's a Dark Element can. You can see it immediately. It really works.
Do you do the artwork yourself?
No, the artwork's not done by me. I just basically give a brief on each design. So I can't remember exactly what I said for Milestone, but it would have been first birthday beer. So cake design with the one candle on top for the first year, and then have icing dripping down with sort of eyes somewhere central. It's quite simple descriptions given, but the artist is just so good that he can bring it to life.
Yeah, he's one of these people, by the looks of it, you give him a rough idea and he can turn it into reality with what your vision is.
It looks 100%. Like he's hit your style, hasn't he? Because it's always sort of on a slightly darker tip. But then also some of them aren't. Like I've just finished Chasing Stars. So for me, I get the eyes of the bike wheels, and then there's the smile underneath, which is like sort of the asteroid underneath.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. It's not that dark.
No, some of them they don't have to all be negative designs. Some of them can be just hidden smiley face.
We should point out that all of these designs are on a black can, so the reason was darkness there.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said earlier. When they're lined up on a shelf, I just wanted it to be very recognizable. So even though they're very, very different by design, if you sort of just looked in a room, I feel you can pick them out quite quickly.
Yeah.
Jet black background on the can, and then usually some very brightly coloured design.
So your cans are in lots of bottle shops, and have you got beers in lots of bars throughout Wales and further afield as well?
Yeah, there's a fair few bars that buy locally. To be honest, I do can the majority of the beer. So
right.
Kegs off each batch, I'll normally get between sort of 10 and 15 kegs, depending on how hoppy the beer is, etc. because I use Seller, which
Right.
is like a marketplace. I can ship them sort of anywhere
They
now,
can go
so that's
anywhere,
made a massive difference with keg sale. So kegs have actually gone up a lot more now.
I just wondered if you'd gone to any local bars and watched people drink your beers and watch the reaction.
No, I think again because I'm quite introvert, I just don't like the idea.
I knew the answer was
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
be
As
no.
soon as you asked that question, I knew what the answer
Yeah, I'm
is.
quite.
You see, if it was me, I'd be there watching. What do they think of it? What do they think of it?
No.
Sorry,
I
anyway.
hate the idea because I just hate the idea of it.
Well, you're doing your first beer festival very soon. In fact, when this goes out, you'll have done the beer festival, Neats End Beer Festival at Pedlar Warehouse in Sheffield. So you're going to have to watch people drink your beers there.
I know. Yeah, it's definitely going to be different because, as I said, it'll be the first festival I've done, and definitely under my own brand. So I don't really know what to expect.
You're not going to pass yourself off as like the hired help, so no one actually realises it's you doing it.
That did cross my mind.
Just to go back to the birthday beers, it's worth saying I finished Chasing Stars. This beer would have a bit of a different message behind it, wouldn't it? Because if you read the can, it's brewed in memory of Dean. Yeah, I'd leave the floor to you for that one.
Recently, my father-in-law had passed away, and quite early on, so when I started Dark Element, the first couple of beers I took up there for the weekend. So we drunk he'd loved the beers. So I thought, when brewing Chasing Stars, I'd do a blend of the first two beers that I did. So that's basically where Chasing Stars come from. And we've basically donated 10% of all proceeds to hospice care charity.
Nice.
Yeah.
The beer itself, it's got 4 hops in it. Nectaron, Citra, Mosaic, Galaxy. Now, I get the Citra, I get the Mosaic, I get the Galaxy. It's one of the most, and I don't mean it in a nasty way, it's one of the most muted Nectaron beers I've had. And it's not a bad thing. It feels to me like the Nectaron is in there in the background, just making sure it doesn't all tip into too much Galaxy and Mosaic.
The Nectaron in that, it was primarily to get that savoury note, which is quite balancing when you're using, at least I find, when using Galaxy, you get big tropical, but also that earthy side. The Nectaron is there, but it gives it that more savoury side than anything.
As you two are talking about it, I've actually just opened my can of Chasing Stars, and you can smell that nectar on the nose, actually. Kind of a little bit savoury and a little bit sweet.
Yeah. But it's quite subjective in that you can...
The Galaxy was probably the most dominant hop, but not OTT, which Galaxy can be sometimes. It can get a bit carried away, can't it? And then it goes sort of full dank, and it's a bit, yes, it's fine, but you probably don't want another beer after you've had it.
No. I tend to, when using Galaxy, try and get it out of the tank as fast as possible. It's got a tendency for going grassy and quite quickly, at least I find anyway.
Can you impart that knowledge to other brewers as well, please? Because some of them haven't picked up on that.
I love the hop. It's just it can be a nightmare to use.
Yeah. So are you always on the lookout for hops that the punters might not know about?
Yeah, I've done. I mean, one of the birthday beers, the Neon Raptor collab, there's a hop in there called, I'll probably butcher the name, but I think it's Audacia. It's a new indie hops hop, and it gives notes of sort of lavender, herbal, floral. So I thought that was quite interesting, quite new, quite different. Tried that in a sort of hazy base. It definitely has pulled the beer more towards West Coasty. It's given it like a resinous, like I said, lavender thing. It's definitely just pulled it in the more West Coast direction. But it's interesting to use. They're quite fun to use. Like one of my favorite beers that I brewed over the last year was Harbinger, and that was Coatu, Belmer, and Cashmere. And I just thought those hops went so well together, like massive citrus. And
I don't
think
see
it's just fun to
Belmer used that much, and it's a really underrated hop, I find.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to be brewing Harbinger again soon because I just really like the beer.
Your sort of beers remind me a bit of Nothing Bound. I don't know whether you're familiar with them in Worcestershire. They do a lot of pales and don't rebrew their beers very often. In fact, there's only sort of a handful that they rebrew. And it's a sort of similar model to what you're doing by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely want to just keep doing new things. But I think when there's something that I really like, I always want to revisit it to maybe make a change to make it a bit better. There's definitely always that curiosity of, I really like that beer, but what if I did this? Or what if I did that?
Well, while we've been talking, I've opened Shredder, which is another birthday beer. And I think Shredder's actually another really good example of what you do with your beers. Because when I first had it, when I first opened a can and tasted it, I was a bit like, there's nothing very discernible in here in terms of Ruaka Nectron Superdelic, and I was sort of waiting for one of them to hit me over the head.
Yeah.
The can's been open, the beer has been in the glass for a few minutes, and now things are starting to happen. I do associate that with your beers in terms of actually you almost have to let them breathe a little bit and different things happen, whereas so often you have a New England or a pale and you can chuck it down your neck and nothing changes after the first sip. I don't find that with your beers. I always find something happens a little bit along the way. So, as I say, Shredder, Ruaka Nectron Superdelic, this could have been the super sweet, fruitiest of fruity New Englands, and it's not.
No, that's more sort of on the, I don't want to say drier side, but generally drier and in the beers I sort of do, but I feel it's
quite restrained, isn't it?
Yeah. But I do like now and again to have, I don't want every beer to just be almost the same base, if that makes sense. So I definitely like to break it up a bit where you can have at least by a couple of the beers, you end up with a variance, if that makes sense. So they're not.
Yeah, I sort of feel like I've almost gone the wrong way round with them. I should have gone Chasing Stars after Shredder because Shredder feels a bit more light-bodied and everything.
Yeah.
But that is testament to the brewing. So,
well, I literally am working backwards because I went in with the 7.2%. Now I've levelled it out a bit. What is it, 5.6% with the Chasing Stars? When are the sours come in? When are the stouts come in? When's the mixed firm stuff come in?
There is a sour in tank currently.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah, so done a 6% sour collab with Cold Shelter. It's got mango, pineapple, coconut cream, vanilla, and banana.
Could you not get anything else in there?
Well, yeah, could have tried, but no.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that should hopefully be ready in sort of the next 2 weeks. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I love the idea of doing these smoothie sours, but I definitely need to give a few a go and learn a bit more about them.
Is that the first sour you've ever brewed?
No. So I've brewed a lot of sours through my career, but definitely never smoothie sours. I've never done that before. Yeah, it's new territory to me. I did brew a sour about 6 months ago called Blender, which was a smoothie sour, but definitely on the thinner side, so didn't quite get the body that I was looking for on it. So it's back to the drawing board and do give it another go and sort of try and get that really thick body into the beer. Yeah,
you've cracked it when it sticks to the glass and you can't see through glass when it's empty. And looking forward, would you do a stout?
I have actually just released a stout yesterday.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, first stout. So
you're always one step ahead.
Yeah. So it is just sort of a no-nonsense stout. So I haven't done it with any pastry or anything like this. It's 5.5%, just chocolate malt, lots of oats, and then nitrode. When
a brewer says that to me, I've just brewed a no-nonsense stout, I get quite excited these days because sort of going back in time, we'd have wanted everything chucked in there, wouldn't? Well, I would.
Yeah.
But now I just want a nice, straight up and down, proper stout. Knowing what you can do with a pale, I'm quite excited by that.
I'll get some cans out to you.
Oh, right. I wasn't fishing, but I'm not going to say no. No, so that's kind of a new chapter for you then to branch out from the pales.
Yeah, I think definitely pales are always going to be the majority of what I brew, but that definitely won't stop me sort of poking into other styles here and there, probably more seasonally. So I definitely want to do a West Coast as well at some point. I'm just sort of waiting for the right time. So yeah, it won't just permanently be pales all the time.
So when you're drinking a beer, when you're cracking open a beer of a night time, when you put the kids to bed, what are you drinking? What do you drink at home?
To be honest, I actually don't drink that much at home. But
why do all brewers say this? I never drink.
It's a strange one. I don't actually drink that much. So a lot of it would mostly be down the New England route, to be honest. Right. But I think it's because I'm predominantly brewing them all the time. I just like to taste to see sort of what other people are doing, like what flavors people are even getting from certain hops. So I just find it useful to sort of try a lot of these beers and think, oh, these breweries use Galaxy. They've got this note. How have they done that? Or,
One thing, questions popped into my head there. So obviously you do a lot of these. If you taste other people's, is there anyone out there that you think's consistently hitting the mark, might be either similar size to you, small or something like that people might not know of, and you sort of think, people need to try these beers as well, like they're knocking their pales out the park?
I've recently started drinking some of the State of Kind stuff. Been massively into that.
Nice.
So yeah, their beers are great. A lot of the time I'll just kind of buy from the can shop. It could be like 10 different breweries or something, So as I said, I'm not always actually drinking beer that often. The brewery that I've definitely enjoyed the most at the moment is State of Kind.
Well, you're part of this big sort of mini explosion of craft breweries in Wales. Why all of a sudden in the last 12 months, 2 years, has it seemingly really taken off in Wales? What's going on? What?
I honestly don't know. So yeah, I think it's just I couldn't even tell you, because a lot of them I would never have met previously. A lot of these new breweries. So
It's weird. You know, there was a time, sort of roughly around when you started. There was every time you looked on Instagram, you were finding another one, another
new brewery. Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. It might just be a lot of people sort of thinking the same thing.
Well, maybe
at a similar time, but yeah, I'm honestly not sure. It's going to be great for sort of the Welsh drinking side, because
Absolutely.
all these new breweries popping up, it hopefully starts to put sort of Wales more predominantly on the map.
I don't think Wales has ever been really known for its beer, has it? But maybe.
No, for sure not. I think all these breweries popping up is a really good thing.
I don't think for a minute that, you know, you don't see other breweries as competition. It's very much somebody else to learn from and to be part of the same sort of environment that you're in, isn't it, rather than competition?
Yeah, definitely not. With Dark Element, I was always hoping to have the national route. I understand it can be difficult when you're very hyper-local brewing, but there's plenty of room for plenty of people. You know, there's breweries popping up all the time, really good new breweries as well. And I think there's so many sort of can shops, bottle shops, ways to sell that it's been made a lot easier now with software and being able to send beer around a lot easier. When I did it at the start, it was super difficult because it was double handling everything all the time. So it would be, if I had a new customer, input details, then input details for courier, then doing everything sort of manually, and that took so much time. But it's been made so much easier to be able to get your beer out nationally now, I feel.
Here's a few quick fire questions. What is the most enjoyable part of what you've been doing with Dark Element since you started?
I'll be honest, it's coming up with the names and designs. I know you'd think it's a beer probably related thing, and I've really enjoyed making the beers, but the most fun part for me is definitely coming up with the names, the designs. I love that side of it.
Which bit have you least enjoyed?
Oh, God.
Having to interact with people.
Yeah. That probably is that, to be honest. I like to just be hidden in the brewery, sort of making beer, shipping it out. And
that's quite an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because I know a lot of brewers are like that, and they're quite introvert, and they like to hide behind the scenes. But actually, when you're running your own brewery, you can't do that. You really are forced to come out of your shell a bit.
It's helped me personally with sort of confidence and stuff, but it's more a lifestyle change than anything.
In the next quickfire question, what do your family think of what you do?
Yeah, I've been super supportive. Obviously, it was a big jump to sort of start a business, especially coming out of COVID and things like that. But I think my family have known I've wanted to do this for a fair few years. So yeah, I've been very supportive.
And what about the most difficult thing you've encountered since you started Dark Element?
I think the most difficult thing was actually trying to balance everything in production. So being able to produce, pack, make sure it's sent out, just trying to organize it all, if that makes sense. Because it was very chaotic at the beginning of I'd go to do a brew day and be like, well, I can't brew now because I need to actually send stuff out or do this. And where I had sort of no understanding of how to do any of these things, it all just took so long. So there'd be a lot of randomness week on, and that was definitely the most difficult. Trying to get it more into a routine, that's helped so much more.
And you must be learning all the time.
Constantly. I think in the last year I've probably learned more than I have in the last sort of 5 years or something. So there's no escaping it, is it? It's deep end. You've got to do it yourself, and I feel that's the best way to learn, really.
And now, if you could see yourself in the future, say in 2-5 years' time, where would you want to be with the brewery?
It's hard to know. To be honest, I'd be happy with sort of having it as a lifestyle business, if that makes sense. So just being able to produce beer selling, but still be able to be hands-on with it and never really sort of leave the brewing side. Maybe have a tap room at some point. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. I definitely have no plans to sort of massively grow or any of this.
You're listening to Dave B and Dave D on Daft About Craft.
It's favourite beer time now. What have we been enjoying drinking since our last episodes? Dave, you can kick off. What has been your favourite beer recently?
I'm going to go to an interesting one for me because it feels like I've had them not shoved down my throat, but a lot of people have suddenly been saying, and they certainly said it's their first ever and potentially a new style to the UK market is how they describe it. I'm talking about Gravity Well and a beer they've done called Boots Void, and it is a smoothie stout.
Oh, God. Are we ready for that? Do we need that?
Well, I was intrigued. I thought,
What's a smoothie stout, anyway?
well, so it's 5%. It was basically banoffee flavour.
This sounds like something you'd hate. What are you on about?
Well, it was the sort of uniqueness of it that intrigued me more than anything. I thought this is either going to taste like a sweet shop and I'm going to hate it, or it'll be all right, maybe. So it's 5%. So I thought, okay, a 5% smoothie stout, I can live with that. At least you're not trying to do something sort of like an Amundsen or an Omnipollo and it's 12%. It poured like Angel Delight.
Oh, God.
It was so thick. But it didn't actually taste quite as thick as it poured, but it did taste thick enough.
Right.
And it did taste like chocolate banoffee. And it was thick. It was sweet, but not really stupidly sweet.
Okay.
And it was actually quite nice. The fact I knew it was a smoothie was you got the milkshake bubbles on it, like, say, a fast food restaurant's milkshake. It was so thick that having had this one evening, the milkshake bubbles were still in the glass the next morning.
Wow.
Like, it was really thick.
And this was from Gravity Well.
This was from Gravity Well. And you know what? It was nice. So I don't know if it's the best beer I've had since we've last recorded. There's two others that I'll mention sort of honourable
But
mentions.
it's the one that you've remembered.
But it's the one I've remembered.
Blimey. Can't believe it. That sounds like something that Vault City would have created as well.
Exactly. So would I have another smoothie stout? Maybe. I'd be interested to see other people's take on it. And yeah, it was good fun, and it was well brewed, and it tasted nice. And my two honourable mentions were the Colonel, who I managed to get a few of theirs off online bottle shop. They had a sort of little bit of a haul, and the Beer de Saison Damson.
Oh, nice. It's good beer, that, isn't it?
Ah, it was so good. That was exactly what you'd hope it would be. And the other one, they've always been a favourite of mine ever since I first had them, is Collective Arts. And there was a couple of cans available. Chromatica, which was a dipper, just did exactly what it said it would do as well. 8%, really fruity, light, hoppy, fish in a barrel type job. But I really like Collective Arts as a brewery, so I was happy with that. But no, Gravity Well, Boots Void, that's the one. If you see it, try it, because it's just quite different.
Blimey. I can't believe. Yeah, I'm a bit stunned that you've gone for that. Oh, cracking. Well, mine's very basic, really. It's an IPA called Radioactive Worms, which is a wonderful name. Makes you think of all sorts.
Yeah, I think I know who you're going to say it's by.
And this is by Asvex.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me, to be honest.
Well, I've noticed that their beers are getting a lot of love in a lot of quarters, and I got a few cans given to me by Beer Guide Worldwide, who lives in Liverpool, where Asvex are based. And I opened this can and poured it out, and it looked like the perfect beer, perfect hazy IPA. Smelt it, perfect hazy IPA. Tasted it, perfectly well balanced, nothing out of sync. So good. 4.5 on Untapped I gave it. Probably could have given it a bit more, to be honest. Citra, Motueka, 5.2%, but it was just, I think it was the fact that it did taste so perfect.
Just elitely done for that kind of combo.
Yeah, and it took it above so many other pales out there at the moment. Honourable mention also to Harry at Mill Hill in Leicester, because I was out the other night and had one of his beers, which was a similar strength to this, and also very good. I forgot how good Mill Hill are, because I've not seen them for a little while.
Yeah, Asvex and Mill Hill, both previous guests. Asvex, it's that kind of thing. We had this conversation quite a lot. I haven't had any Asvex for quite a while. They've sort of slipped off the radar because a lot of beer comes out of Asvex, and it's just slipped into that thing of, for me, I'm a bit like, well, I can leave it, I'll go find something else. But now you've said that, it makes me think I should probably try some more again.
Next time you're looking for somebody to get some beers from, try Asvex, or Mill Hill, actually. Yeah.
Well, I love Mill Hill, but same thing, it's seeing the beer for Mill Hill, actually, for me. Don't see them around very often, but whenever I do, you know you're going to have a nice beer.
Had 3 mixed firm beers from Duration as well, which I picked up at a beer festival in Chester a couple of months ago. They were really good. I forgot how much I love Duration too. It's nice just every now and again to remind yourself how good some of these breweries are. But yeah, some great beers knocking around them.
Daftaboutcraft, powered by Craft Brew Festival.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
Cloudwater are a brewery that have made a lot of headlines all over the craft beer scene and on this podcast. We've featured them quite a lot over the years. Also in this very feature, Hype or Tripe. They're 10 years old. They've released 6 beers. Are they good or bad? Are they Hype or Tripe? We're going to find out. Not all 6 though, because that might be taking the proverbial a little bit. 6 beers ranging from 0.5% to 10%. They've covered the bases very well there.
They have, and as we'll get on to, this is what's slightly influenced my thinking as to, as I say, you can choose what I'm going to try, and there's a reason why I've picked what I've picked, which I'll go through, but I didn't actually buy all 6. I didn't bother with the alcohol-free beer.
I felt a bit bad not getting the alcohol-free one, so I got it. Partly because of when we spoke to Sober Boozer recently and we realised how good some of these alcohol-free beers can actually be.
Absolutely, and it crossed my mind as well, but I resented the fact that beer was about a £5, and that felt quite a lot for an alcohol-free beer for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying for the processes, aren't you, I guess? It's the same processes.
I don't mind when my alcohol-free beer comes in at maybe $3.50 to $4.50 a can.
Yeah. When
it's a bit more than that, I sort of thought, I don't know if I want to pay that, so I didn't.
Yeah, is it a premium product if it's alcohol-free? That's a good actually, that's a good question. That's a question we can pose to our Sober Boozer man, Ben, when we have him back on. So, right, you've got 3 cans there, 2 cans there. I'm going to pick one of them.
I've got the pale or the amber lager.
Well, I'll tell you what, because I had an amber in Brew to Me, go for the amber.
Okay. We've talked about the alcohol-free beer, and there's a pale ale, there's an amber lager, there's a New England IPA, and then there's slightly more obvious hype beers, I would suppose, the double Hopfenweiss and the Tipper.
Do you know, it's ever so strange, but when I saw the Tipper, I thought, I don't want that. I don't want a Tipper from Cloudwater.
It's not that I don't necessarily want it, because I suspect it might be okay, but I thought to myself, well, look, if you're so proud of yourself for your birthday, this should be a really, really good pale. This should be a really, really good amber lager. So it should justify whether it's Hype or Tripe.
Yeah. These should be 6 awesome beers to showcase the different styles they can pull off. And every reason to hope and think they will be. The beers I brought up of the 6 were Beyond the Mirage, the 6% New England IPA. The Pale, the 4.5%, It Is and So It Was. And then the double Hopfenweiss, which I have a nasty feeling you're going to make me drink, at 8%.
You know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to say try the New England.
Okay, that is the one I wanted, so thank you. Yeah, good.
Well, I figure, having also just talked about a pale which you really liked and thought was excellently done by Azvex, this is a good counterbalance.
Yeah, it really is actually, because, you know, Azvex are one of those big names now, perhaps even a bigger name now than Cloudwater is actually.
There's a case to be made, isn't there?
Yeah, I bet a lot of people would have them right up there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I would. I'd mention them in the same breath for sure.
What do we think of the can art?
I was underwhelmed.
Well,
they stick to a theme, which I think is a good thing. I think having them all as the same sort of rough design makes sense. They remind me slightly. Do you know? This is a real niche reference. Do you know? There's something down on the Solent in Southampton.
I knew there was some sea references coming. Each can has got a 1 and a 0, but the 0 is elongated and it looks like a surfboard.
But there is something down on the Solent which looks very similar to this, and I can't. Someone will message in and say what it is. I'm thinking of.
Okay.
It's I think it's out on the sea. I can't for the life of me think what it is. It's either that or the other thing it reminds me of slightly is, and again quite niche, Burj Khalifa in Maytown.
Oh yes, yeah, it is. It does a bit, doesn't it?
So I don't love the can art. I think it's fine, but if you saw them on the bottle shop thing, would they jump out at you particularly as being birthday beers and all singing and all dancing?
Maybe not.
I think maybe if they were all together, they'd look okay, but I wasn't blown away.
Talking about being blown away by beers or not blown away, before I get stuck into this beer, I want to ask you a question. So I was out recently at a pub, just a normal pub in a Worcestershire village, and I had a pint of cask ale from Ludlow Brewery, who I quite rate. Very nice. Been to their tap room lots of times there next to the station in Ludlow. Had this beer, which came out cloudy. Obviously, we love cloudy beers, but cask beers when they're traditional cask beers usually aren't cloudy for a start.
Unless it's something which we do love, which is craft on cask.
Modern craft out of cask. No, this was a traditional beer. I couldn't see through the glass, sort of red flags already waving around. And I tasted and I thought, oh, God, no, it's not right. This is not right. It's a little bit sour. Not right. What do you do? Do you just leave it and not say anything? Do you drink it and just not say anything? Or do you take it back to the bar and say, this is off?
Well, it probably took me a few years, and doing the podcast certainly helped with that. If I was out on my own, it's a different conversation, but normally I'd be out with at least Katie. I would probably make her smell it first and be like, I don't think that's right. What do you think? Because if a beer smells a bit off, you don't need to be a beer connoisseur to know, do you? Because it will start, smells a bit vinegary, a bit wrong. If she was to agree, I would then just go and take it up. Because it took me a while, but I think when you drink as much beer as you and I do, you just have to be confident in your ability that you're right. And I've never done it. I haven't actually had that. You watch, I'm going to have that experience come up now the next time I go. I haven't had it for ages. I've never had it where I've taken it up and someone's either sampled it or just disbelieved me. It's always been, okay, no problem. Yeah. But so my answer is I would probably try, if possible, to get verified, but I'd probably back myself to just go, no, this isn't right. What did you do?
It's hard, isn't it? Because you don't want to kind of upset anybody. But I look at it, I sort of think, well, the brewery don't want their beer being sold like this. It makes them look bad. And I know what that beer should taste like because I've had it before. My daughter's boyfriend took it back.
Oh, Dave.
But he offered. I think he quite
with his other arm halfway up his back.
He quite relished the idea of it, to be honest. So he said, "I'll take it back. I'll take it."
I know you don't historically like confrontation, but I think when you're not trying to do it to be difficult, are you?
No,
you
not
want
at
to
all.
have a nice beer, and if you think it, as you say, I think the most salient point is if the beer's not right, and especially if you've had it before and you know it's not right, it's almost a duty of care to the brewery.
It went back, but I didn't take it. But I just wondered what your take on it was, because it can be quite embarrassing, can't it? I think in future I would have no qualms. I think as you get older, you have no qualms complaining about things, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't necessarily view it as getting embarrassed about it, because as I say, I think if it was a thing where you're either new to beer or craft beer or just don't like to make a fuss, fair enough. But I think, as I say, you and I drink enough beer when we know if it's right and if it's wrong, and you're not doing, as I say, you're not doing it to be a pain. You're just pointing out that perhaps this beer's gone in the keg or the cask, or maybe the tap's not clean. But you don't have to say any of that. You're just saying the beer's not quite right. Can I have a different one, please?
Once a cask has been opened, you're looking at a maximum of sort of 4 or 5 days, maybe a week before it's turned. And I think some pubs are probably getting away with murder here and leaving stuff on for far too long.
Well, that leads on to a very different question, because you see a lot of places churn casks and kegs. Sometimes, I'm not going to name where this is because that is unfair, but I went somewhere, and it would now be 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I happened to have a look at their Untapped list a couple of weeks later. There was very little change.
Yeah, I've noticed this a lot recently.
I wouldn't say any of the ones I had there and then were wrong. Like, they were fine. I don't remember having anything that was noticeable, because I think I would notice. Wonder what they'd taste like now.
You wouldn't want to go back and try, to be honest, would you? If they've been
not if you know that. But obviously, the play is the vast majority of your audience won't know that.
But you're serving a product that is by that point substandard. You're doing yourselves a disservice, your punter a disservice, and the brewery who made it a disservice. It's bad practice. But I notice a lot of pubs. I do check menus at pubs and what beers they've got on, and you go back 2 or 3 weeks later and the same beer. Maybe it's a different cask of the same beer. I don't think so. I think we all deserve a little bit better than to be sold cask beer that's been open for weeks on end.
100%. We have gone very much into the
Anyway,
weeds.
back to the hype beer we're actually talking about. Dave, you go first because you opened yours first. So you've got the amber lager. What does it taste like?
It smells malty and a little bit sweet, as I would expect from an amber stroke Viennese lager.
Does it taste like a standout beer of its genre?
It just doesn't. And I'm not doing that just to be harsh. It's just fine. It is just an amber lager.
But what could you do to an amber lager to make it worthy of a 10th birthday beer status?
I mean, it's a weird choice to begin with, to be honest. I don't hate it for the fact that you've chosen to try and do that as something different, but I don't really. How do you?
I wonder.
How do you elevate an amber lager, like you say, to be so amazing that I'm going to remember this in 20, 10, 15 beers' time?
Do you think that most people, when they've bought any of these beers, have bought them as a collective? As the pack. Well, they have actually, because Cloudwater was selling them as the pack, either 5 or then 6. You could get the 6th one with the alcohol free. But if you're buying them direct from Cloudwater, you had to buy the pack, didn't you? Now, a little bit of me here is going to be a bit naughty and suggest that the cost of producing an amber lager maybe is on the lower side of the spectrum.
Yeah, probably offsets what you're having to produce, the cost to produce a tipper or a double Hoppenweiss, for example.
Yes. How much were these?
I think the 6-pack was 35 and I think 5 was 30.
Okay. That's not a bad price, actually. It's not a bad price.
It's not a bad price when you've got 10% and 8% with, new duty laws and things like that in there. If I wanted this to be a really good amber lager, I'd actually expect it to be a bit more biscuity on the back end, and this isn't. It's not going to live long in the memory. This is the exact reason why I wanted to do this for Highport Trial. If people think I'm picking on a beer, or not picking on a beer, picking on the brewery, because it's like, oh, well, yeah, what did you expect from an amber lager? Well, yeah, but if you're going to release this to mark 10 years of brewing beers, I want this to be really good, and it's just not. It's just average.
Do you know what I find slightly weird is that 10 years it's a landmark, isn't it, for a brewery?
Exactly. It's not a sort of we're 6 or 7, which,
but then
as we know in craft brewing, is a landmark because it's hard to get from year to year. Like, it's not easy.
Well, yeah, that's true. But they're not even known for producing that beer.
No.
Where did that come from?
They have a very good record on Highport Tribe Cloudwater because persistence is utile. I can still remember drinking that with
wonderful
because that was superb beer.
We have had a couple of their tippers which we weren't too keen on. We thought they were too sweet and all the rest of it. Dues where they're owed, that persistence is utile was excellent, and they do still make some excellent beers. That what you've got doesn't sound like one of them.
It's just a filler beer, and I take umbrage with the fact that you're asking your customers to part with money if they want to buy from you direct. Now, you could wait till they go out and bottle shops. You're asking them to part with money to buy the whole pack, and you put a perfectly nice beer. There is nothing wrong with it. It's not badly brewed. It doesn't taste horrible, but it's just a beer. And yet I'm expected to part with my hard-earned money the same as you're expected to part with your hard-earned money for an amber lager, which essentially you wouldn't buy normally and would probably just sit in the fridge.
Yeah. I wonder when, though, bottle shops where you can buy those beers individually, I bet the weakest seller surely is the amber lager.
I feel like the pale and the amber lager are going to be the 2 weakest ones. The alcohol-free might do quite well.
Yeah, because it's Cloudwater making an alcohol-free beer. And
then the New England is sort of the standard, and then I'd expect the stronger beers to do better. But I've railed on this beer quite badly. I'm interested to see how yours is.
Beautiful colour. Nice head to it, poured it out. Nice aroma. Tastes pretty good. A little bit on the sweet side.
Okay. The cans themselves don't give away what's in it, do they?
They don't. And this is a Cloudwater thing I've noticed. They often don't tell you what's in it. We've got to dig around a bit.
I was going to see, what's the beer's name again?
So the beer's name is Beyond the Mirage. I've got to say, it's a nice beer, this. It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it much more than you've obviously enjoyed yours. It is certainly no better than the beer from Asvect I talked about earlier in Tried and Tested.
So, yeah, again, I mean, even the description isn't going to give it away on Untapped.
Tell me the hops that are in it. Why can't you tell me? What's the secret? Interestingly enough, I haven't actually seen these birthday beers available from many other places.
No, that's true. I haven't seen them out and about massively. It sounds like you've got a fair beer, but again, are you going to remember it?
I wouldn't have that beer and say, oh my God, that's a Cloudwater beer all over that is. I can tell that's a Cloudwater beer. Although, I'm not sure what a Cloudwater beer tastes like these days, but that's another subject. But I don't know, because they seem to have lost the plot at some point along the way with lots of things. Their identity, really, to be honest.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I remember, I think a lot of people, yourself included, I remember first getting put onto Cloudwater, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I think we've had this conversation where we've done this feature before with these guys. Like, "Oh my goodness, these are pushing boundaries. These are incredible. They're doing something so different every time." And I get that the scene has changed so much since then. 10 years, obviously, and you can't probably do what you were doing 10 years ago and expect to probably turn a good enough profit for what you want to be. But I definitely agree with you that somewhere along the line the identity has been lost, because, as you say, what is a Cloudwater beer now? I feel like I only drink these beers for the purposes of the podcast. I never buy a Cloudwater.
You never seek them out anymore, do you? Whereas at one time we both would have done.
Yeah, I remember releases, like there was the speaker releases.
One thing that I will look at with them is their more interesting stuff in bottles. I do look at that, like Persistence, as Utah, and anything in bottles I find really, really usually hits the mark, more so than the cans and draft these days.
You know, we've done Chubbles for this. We were that didn't hit the spot. One, I think once it was okay, and then we went again and it wasn't quite so good because they did different Chubbles, and I struggle with them as a brewery these days. Like, I just don't really know what they would do to entice me to buy their beers. They've got money out of both of us for these. Yeah. I'm very much hoping the Tipper and it doesn't have to be the Tipper. Any of the other beers are going to elevate them above this.
Dave, what is that beer? Is it hype or is it tripe?
In the context of what they have released it as, it is tripe. Which doesn't happen very often. We can normally sort of come to an agreement that
I'll rein it back a bit. Mine isn't tripe, but like we said, I'm not sure it's the best beer they could have done to showcase 10 years of Cloudwater.
I think this is the sticking point on the context of what you have released these beers. This beer is tripe.
Don't say we're not honest.
People like it when you're not like blowing smoke up everyone's arse. And I'm not going to blow smoke up an average beer's arse. It is average.
Daftaboutcraft, brought to you with mosaic board print, makers of supreme beer mats.